internet and will be available to view online now and in the future. We welcome the use of the Welsh language at meetings, but I have had no request for people to speak Welsh today, so this meeting will be conducted in English only. Those attending in the chamber, please be aware that we are all on camera and you may be visible on screen when people around you are speaking. And please remember to speak clearly into your microphones. Committee members participating remotely, can you please refrain from using the chat function and instead use the raised hand icon to indicate when you want to speak. And please remember to keep your microphone muted when you are not talking. Right, we'll move on to the agenda. Agenda item 1, attendance and apologies. Geraint, do we have any apologies?
Thank you, Chair. I believe we have apologies from Councillor Hugh Bevan, and I've also just found out in the last few minutes that Councillor Ashley has got some IT issues this morning, so we better log his apologies unless he joins.
Yes, thank you, Geraint. We'll move on to agenda item 2, declarations of interest. Geraint, could you speak? Could you please ask members in alphabetical order to state whether they have any interest to declare?
No problem, thank you, Chair. If I can, right, I don't think Councillor Ashley has managed to join yet, so I'll move on. Councillor Burnett doesn't look like he's here either. Right, Councillor Constance.
No interests.
Thank you. Councillor Crick.
No interest.
Hear you.
Councillor Stephen Evans.
None that I'm aware of.
Councillor Haller.
No interest.
Councillor Gaynor James.
Yes, interest on item number 5 as being a member of Pontypool Community Council.
Thank you. Councillor Keith James.
Yes, similarly to Councillor James in relation to my membership of Pontypool Council.
Thank you. Councillor Jenkins.
No interest whatsoever.
Councillor Fay Jones.
No interest on payroll.
Thank you. Councillor Janet Jones.
None that I'm aware of, Geraint.
Thank you. I don't think Councillor O'Connell is in the meeting at the moment, so I'll move on to Councillor Parish.
Yes, I declare an interest on agenda item 5 as I'm a member of Pontypool Community Council.
Okay, thank you. I can't see Councillor Rapier at the moment, so Councillor Thomas?
No interest, clear.
Thank you. That's everybody, Chair.
Thank you, Geraint. Right, we'll move on to agenda item 3, minutes of the Planning Committee from the 16th of September 2021. Members, could you possibly state whether you have anything to raise in relation to the minutes? Anybody? If not, I will take them as approved. I can't see anyone's hand going up, so we'll take them as approved. Thank you. Agenda item 4, planning application 19/P/0750/RES. And the application is for reserved matters approval, appearance, landscaping, layout and scale in respect of 170 dwellings, including associated roads and infrastructure at land west of Cwmbran Drive, South Sebastopol, Wren's Nest 2. We had a site inspection on the 29th of September on this one. Can I ask Helen Smith, Principal Planner, to present a brief recap of this application, please?
Excuse me, Chair, it's Polly Ellis from Legal Services. Could I just clarify one point before Helen starts her presentation, please?
Yes, of course.
Could I ask Councillor Fay Jones whether she's a member of Cwmbran Community Council that has been consulted on this application?
I am, yes. I don't think it was there when they consulted.
I think you just need to declare a personal interest through your membership of Cwmbran Community Council. So if you can just confirm that.
Okay, I will confirm a declaration.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Polly. Right. Can I ask Helen Smith, Principal Planner, to present a brief recap of this application?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'll just bring up the presentation now. Okay, yes, as the Chair just mentioned, this application was presented to last Planning Committee where it was deferred by members for a site visit. The site visit took place on the 29th of September. Just as a quick recap, members will recall this is a reserve matters application for 170 dwellings and associated roads and infrastructure at the development known as South Sebastopol. Here we have the aerial photograph showing the site. You can see phase 1 of Wren's Nest development already underway, and this is the application site under consideration today. Here we have the development framework approved as part of the Outline Planning Commission, and you can see the canal to the west of the site. And here we have the developable areas approved as part of the Outline Planning Commission. This is the amended layout of the development, showing the spine road through the site, coming from phase 1 and then eventually heading into the future phases to the west, which will be subject to future planning applications. As members may recall, this application doesn't include details of the canal crossing into the next phase. This will come forward under a separate planning application, but we requested indicative details to ensure that anything that we approved as part of this scheme didn't prejudice an appropriate bridge across the canal in the future. Members may recall that on the site visit we went through the phase 1. The house types on this phase will replicate those on phase 1, and here we have some street scenes showing those dwellings. We discussed the area of open space now to be provided to provide a visual link to the woodland to the south, and here we have a drawing showing that open space next adjacent to the spine road. And here, as we discussed on site, there are quite significant levels issues which will require to be addressed through a large degree of cut and fill on site. Here we have some updated site sections showing this area of open space and how it'll be integrated into the street scene. These are CGI images produced by the applicant to show the changes in the levels and how they will deal with it in terms of any landscaping and any retaining structures. And here we have another view. This is adjacent to the southern access of the site. And here we have, to the right here, is the main spine road. Members will recall we walked across the site, and here are just some photographs of the fields that we walked through. So just to the rear there, you can see the bank of trees along the canal. And here we have the woodland to the south, which is now to be visually linked into the layout. And just to the left there, you can see the existing phase 1 currently under development. And this is a further afield showing that this is approximate location of the spine road with the existing development in the distance and the woodland to the south. And this photograph just demonstrates the challenging topography of this part of the site. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Helen. Geraint, can you confirm if there are members wishing to comment or ask a question? I haven't seen any hands going up.
No, I can't see any of the virtual hands, Chair.
Right, if there are no comments or questions, would a member like to move a proposal?
I'll move the proposal.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Gwyn, you're seconding. Did you want to speak, Gwyn, or just seconding? We can't hear you.
Yeah, I will speak as well, but I will second. I would like to say thank you to the officers who took us on the site visit. Very informative, and we learned a lot, and they did a good job because praise is very sparse in this area, I know. So thank you very much for an excellent couple hours.
Thank you.
And I'll second the proposal.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that, Gwyn. Right. So, Geraint, could you please ask members in alphabetical order to state whether they are for, against, or abstaining?
No problem, thank you, Chair. Just right, I don't believe councillors Ashley, Bevan or Burnett have managed to join, so I'll go on to Councillor Constance.
For.
Councillor Crick. I'll come back to Councillor Crick. Councillor Evans.
For.
Councillor Horler.
For.
Councillor Gaynor James.
For.
Councillor Keith James.
For.
Councillor Jenkins.
For.
Councillor Faye Jones.
For.
Councillor Janet Jones.
For.
I don't think Councillor O'Connell is in the meeting. Councillor Parish.
For.
And I don't believe Councillor Rapier is either. Councillor Thomas.
For.
And I'll come back to Councillor Crick, please.
Yes, apologies for that. For.
Thank you. That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. So this application has been approved. Right, we'll move on to agenda item 5. Planning application 21/P/0670/FUL. Change of use to a 5-bed HMO, use class C4 at Station House, 1 Station Street, Abersychan, Pontypool. Can I ask Claire Hall, Senior Planner, to present the report?
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so this is the application site at the northern end of Abersychan Town Centre. It's a detached property. This is a council-owned car park adjacent. This is a photograph submitted by the applicant showing a proposed alteration to the front boundary wall to provide a new gate for access to bin storage and some new biodiversity enhancement at roof level. This is the layout of the property over 3 floors. There's a ground floor, kitchen and living room, bathroom area, and then there are 5 bedrooms over 2 floors above. This is just a bird's eye view of the same. So this is the council-owned car park. There's a garage serving the property at the back, and this is the front boundary wall that you saw in that last photograph, with a small outdoor space to the rear of the building for clothes drying purposes. Some more photographs of the site. So this is the garage here. Access to the garage is through the council-owned car park, but that's not applicable to the current proposal because access to the bin storage and clothes drying areas will be through the alterations to the front. And some closer views of it. And that's it. No updates to the report. Everything as per the agenda.
Thank you, Claire.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Geraint, have you seen any hands going up? I haven't.
No, none.
Hello, Chair. I'm here on the phone, by the way.
Can you say that again? Who said that?
It's Stuart Ashley. I'm on via phone. Sorry to come in there, by the way.
Sorry, Stuart. Right. Thank you for joining us, Stuart. Right. I can see Steve Evans and then Janet Jones.
Thanks, Chair. The one thing I'm raising is when the representations received from residents, there were some steps in between the properties which isn't owned by that property. Is there any issues we need to know of before we make our decision?
Thank you, Councillor. No, I think it was more a question of observation. If I go back to the photograph to show you that area. It's this area here. I think it was more, so the representation was to make it clear that those steps and access actually belong to this adjacent property. It doesn't actually affect the change of use. I think it was probably more for, you know, the owner or the occupier to be aware of that the adjacent property seem to have an arrangement where they let people use the steps if they come to an agreement with them, you know, as neighbours, but it's actually outside of the boundary of the application site. So again, the alterations to the front boundary on the other side of the house should mean that they don't actually need to use that side anyway.
Thanks for that. The only reason I raised that because just in case it happened to be a fire escape and the gate was locked, you know, that was my concern more than anything. Yeah.
No, like I said, there is access out onto the from the property. There's a gap in the side wall into the council car park anyway, so it's not reliant on anything on that other side of the property.
Right, thank you. Janet?
Thanks, Jay. Steve asked one of the questions I was going to ask. My other question is, do we know, how can I put it, the types of people that are going in there? Because I've got concerns. It's a, you know, multi-occupancy, and yet there's only one bathroom and shared kitchen facilities. Should there be more bathrooms in there if they're all going to live independently, Claire?
Thank you, Councillor. I think that would be an answer for the separate HMO licence that they would need to apply for. I mean, purely from a land use planning point of view, you know, this could be occupied but by couples or single people. It's the fact that they don't live as single households that requires planning permission. There will be a separate requirement for a HMO licence, which will obviously scrutinise that in more detail, and depending on you know the makeup of the occupation, there'll be a separate consenting regime as to the adequacy of the internal facilities in that regard.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Faye? Did you have
The question's just been asked by Janet Jones. It was about the number of toilets in the residence. Thank you.
Thank you. Gwyn?
Hi. Obviously, I live in this area and I've known Aberystwyth all my life. Car parking is at a premium in that area. If these people who move in on cars, that car park after 4 or 5 o'clock at night is full. During the day, there's not so many in there. So my main concern is for parking. All right, you can say there's plenty of car parking in Aberystwyth. Yeah, there is, but it's not near where these people live. And people like to have their cars parked near as they can possibly. And the thing is, what type of people are coming into there? Because some of the residents have raised concerns that, you know, there's a lot of stuff going on in Aberystwyth and the surrounding areas, which is not conducive to easy living. My main concern is the parking, but I'm also interested in who's going to move into this house. And as others have said on you, 1 bathroom for 5 people? Weird.
Shall I come back in, Chair?
Yes, please. I thought I read in the report there were 2 bathrooms.
No, I think it is only showing 1 on the ground floor. I mean, there may be, you know, an ensuite maybe in 1, but no, it's the ground floor is communal and the bedrooms are on the upper floor. So, but again, it's coming back to the role of the land use planning system is to just to assess the suitability of a house in multiple occupation being located at this site. You've seen the Highway Authority's comments on the parking. From a planning point of view, this doesn't get much more sustainably located, really. You've got, so irrespective of whether you own a car or not, you've got ease of access to shops and services and a main public, you know, transport bus route. So we would, you know, not anticipate a house in multiple occupancy putting any more pressure in the location in terms of facilities than, you know, if anything, a family dwelling with 5 bedrooms would probably have a higher propensity of car ownership than potentially people from a HMO society who would be looking to locate sustainably where they could walk and access services by other means. In terms of who would be occupying it, again, that would be a subject of the separate HMO licensing regime. This is not a council-run facility, so I can't offer you any further details or assurances in that regard.
Right, thank you.
Can I come back in there, Chair?
Yes.
Yeah. You know, obviously I've gone through this thing here, and you've got two ward members that are totally against this, the local people, and this is the thing, you know, we need people in the area to listen to people in that area. If it's determined that this is going to go ahead, I would say let's have a site visit and let the people down south come and have a look at this area, because the two ward members on here are totally against it on a good few points. I don't need to read them out because we've all read it. And if you go to the local residents, they are totally against it. And I think it's time we started listening to ward members and to local people when we decide on these, because we are making decisions here which is not to the benefit of the local people. And I really think we should have a real good look at this. And I would say that the people down south need to come up, the councillors down south, if it goes through today, to come up and have a look at this area, because it's totally unsuited for what the application is.
Thank you, Gwyn.
Sorry, can I come back in there? Can I come back in there, Chair?
Yes.
Just to say, we didn't really have much third-party objection to this, so any concerns that local residents may have not been communicated to us. Yes, the ward members have communicated concerns, but in terms of the application was obviously subject of consultation, and we didn't actually receive that many representations. Certainly, I've had other applications for HMOs where the strength of feeling locally has been very strongly communicated to us in the planning department, and that's not what's happened here.
Right, thank you, Claire.
Yeah, can I come back in on it? Yeah,
yes,
I think what it is. Who's interfering there now? Right. What I'm saying is this, that I didn't know about this application. I know it because it's on planning, but where in a second was this put? Was the local residents, were they mail dropped, or were they told? Because it's not my area, but it's very near my area, and I've had people say to me, making complaints about it. So, how do we go about letting people know about this? Newspapers, mail shots, or stuck on lampposts? Because there's a lot of people don't know about it.
Do you want to come back in, Claire?
Yeah. Thanks.
You're on mute, Claire.
You're muted, Claire. Claire, you're muted.
Yeah, you're still muted.
Sorry, Chair. I was just providing a screen share with I was just checking the report. So a site notice was put up on the lamppost in the public car park adjacent to the site, and neighbour notification letters were sent to all the residential properties that are opposite and the one adjacent to the site. So we did a combination of a mail drop and a site notice in this case.
Right, thank you, Claire. Faye? Did you put your hand up?
No, my hand is down since the last time.
Okay,
Chair, I don't have a hand to put up. Can you include me in the order, please?
Yes, Steve, then Janet, and then Stuart.
Thanks, Chair. Something which you mentioned on page 47, which concerns me, and I have to declare an interest because on South Wales Fire, you've got multiple occupancy dwelling you're proposing, and yet you're concerned about a sprinkler system. I mean, are we in correspondence with the service to ask them regarding any planning issues like this? Because this concerns me, because there's 5 people and there's no sprinkler system in the property.
Right. Can you come in, Claire?
Yes, sorry if it sounds like I'm ducking it. I'm really not. These are all issues for the separate HMO licensing regime. From a planning point of view, sort of internal alterations don't fall within the remit of the land use planning system. It is a land use issue. So the issue we're being asked to consider is whether, rather than one family live together as a single household, we are happy from a land use planning point of view for this house to be converted so that multiple users live share the property, but don't live together as a single household. That's the planning issue. The nuts and bolts as to whether there's bathrooms, sprinklers, fire escapes, that sort of thing are all covered by separate legislation and really don't fall within our remit.
Thank you, Claire. Janet? You muted, Janet.
Chair, Claire, would that apply to the management of the property? Would that come under the other licence and not under planning?
Yes.
Okay, that's all I need to know. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Stuart?
I don't know anybody else here. I've actually lived in a motorable house like this. I must admit, I'm horrified at the fact that you consider that idea of just having one toilet. I came in on this conversation. I'm sorry I wasn't able to begin with. A 5-bedroom house with 5 separate households or flatlets, one bedroom, one toilet and 1 bathroom is actually totally inadequate. I've lived in houses in Cardiff and Bristol with this sort of setup. It just horrifies me that there's just 1 bathroom there, because I'm sure if they all want to go there at one time, they're going to be out the garden. Sorry to say it, but that's what happens. And most modern setups tend to have at least two toilets and 1 bathroom. And not to have that provision horrifies me. The same with the kitchen setup. If it's small, you're going to have people doing it in their room, and that's inadequate. I just point that because we've had HMOs in Pontnewy. In fact, we've got them in Cwmbran. We get them all over the borough. HMOs are, unless they're done properly. And in fact, Gayna's got more than anybody in her ward, to be quite honest. She probably got to give us chapter and verse on this one. If they're not done properly, they become a problem. If they're done properly, and people have to live somewhere, houses are fine. But 2 bathrooms and adequate provision for people to have eat and drink is a problem. As for car parking, I've noticed they've even mentioned bicycles, but that rubbish disposal, I know you've got to do this, you've got the licence and pram for these things. But the one thing that does worry me is that whole bathroom issue, and somebody's picked it up already. I thought I could have a say on it. I mean, people have to live somewhere. We've got a terrible housing problem, and part of the mix is having HMOs. So it's some sort of tolerance. As for people finding out about them, they're not any worse or any better than anybody else, to be quite honest.
Thank you, Stuart. Janet, you've still got your hand up. Do you want to come in? Right, thank you. Claire, you've said that it's the licence should be looking at the problems of bathrooms and toilets. So where do we stand now?
I think, thank you, Chair. I think from a planning point of view, the conversion policy of the local plan is a criteria set out in policy H6, and it doesn't mention there anything in terms of internal facilities, and that would be expected really, because from a planning point of view, we wouldn't normally get involved in that level of detail. Now, had there be a criteria that says for every 3 bedrooms you have to have a bathroom or something like that, like you have with parking standards, for every 3 bedrooms you have to have a minimum of 1 space per bedroom, that sort of thing, then yes, that's something we could work with. But in the absence of that, as a planning committee, you have to be satisfied that that is something that is controlled by separate legislation, which has its own criteria and requirements, and if it doesn't comply to be able to grant a HMO licence, then I'm sure that the modifications will be sought internally to make that possible, because they are unable to occupy this property as a HMO without first obtaining planning permission and a HMO licence. They require both. So the criteria for each will be different. and I strongly suggest that some of the areas of concern here are more to do with the criteria for a licence than a planning consideration. We have to be guided by the local plan. Policy H6 is the criteria. As the report says, it doesn't fully comply with H6 insofar as parking is concerned, but your officers are satisfied that given the situation on the ground in Aberystwyth and the availability of alternative means of travel and access to services, that's not a reason for withholding consent for the change of use in this case.
Right. Thank you, Claire. There's Gwyn and Janet with their hands up. Do you want to come in, Gwyn?
Yeah. I think if we agree to this, we are setting the precedent because there's no extra car parking. And another little thing which I just thought of now, if anybody moves in there with a young child, outside their property, right, it's the beginning of Aberystwyth, and the rest of there is a road, the main road. This is the first house on the left-hand side. Now, the pavement outside there is very, very narrow. And I mean narrow. I would probably say that you wouldn't get a wheelchair through there, and you probably would not be able to get a pushchair through there. So you've got to look at that. If anybody moves in there with a child, and how are they going to get through there? Like I said, if you think you want to go ahead with this, I would ask for a site meeting, but obviously I'm against it.
Yeah. Okay, Gwyn. Janet?
Thanks, Jess. Thanks, Claire. I understand perfectly what you said about different policies, but I really feel very uncomfortable about this at the moment, and I really don't feel that I can vote in favour of it. I said I've got really concerns, and unless we had information or further information, which you have guided us about, I really don't think that I could support this application.
Right, thank you, Janet. Right, we are in a difficult position now because they need a licence as well as planning permission to go ahead with this house of multiple occupation.
Sorry, Chair, can I perhaps come in with a suggestion here? If members' concerns are on the HMO licence side of things, and coupled with Councillor Jenkins's view that people need to see this site, may I suggest that if members are not quite sure at this stage, that you maybe defer for a site visit if you want one, or for me to go back and obtain more information on exactly what the HMO licence will and will not insist upon, and then you can then take a view as to whether or not the layout as currently exists and as submitted from a planning point of view is likely to be okay from a HMO licensing, or you'll have some further information as to what modifications they may need to make to satisfy that separate consenting regime before you come to a decision on the planning side of things.
Yeah, that's very sensible. If we have a site visit and we have information from the licensing as you suggested now, I think that's the best way forward. Now I've got a few hands up. Veronica, Gwyn, and then Janet.
Thank you, Chair. Can I say I agree totally with what Claire is suggesting, and I would also like to moot that if we have further similar plans, that is what should be included for us in the future, because I was quite frankly horrified to read this, and it's quite clear that other people share my views. I've withheld from commenting until now, but I do think that with anything like an HMO, we need to know far more. I sort of read it and thought, well, this is like student accommodation in the 60s, which is really what Stuart was saying. No, I think we need far more the sort of facilities we would expect for people now to be able to live independently. Means that they need to have proper bathroom facilities, proper kitchen facilities. You've only to look at some of the one-bed flats that we've got these days, which were built in the 60s, have not got proper laundry facilities for people, have not got, it might be a small little kitchenette, but people these days expect far more. You know, you can't just put a microwave in a bedroom. It's not sufficient. And it's a worry then for other residents in terms of fire. So the more information we have, the more we can come to a sensible conclusion.
Yes, thank you, Veronica. Gwyn? Then Janet?
Yeah, thank you, Claire. That was very well put. And Veronica, I agree with every word you said. And I think it should be a statutory condition that any decision now, which involves the south or the north, that we need to get together and go and have a look at the place, because I can't make any decision on Cwmbran unless I go down on my own and have a little look around, and I expect them the same done in Cwmbran area. Unless they come up and see this area in Aberystwyth, I don't really believe that anybody should be voting on anything that they hasn't visited. If you've got a problem down in Cwmbran, yes, I'm willing to make a site visit and make my decision after the site visit. And hopefully you southern councillors will agree with what I've just said.
Thank you, Gwyn. Janet?
Thanks, Jess. Thanks, Claire. I totally endorse what you say, and I would like to see this put in statute for all other planning applications where there's going to be HMOs. I think it should be it should be common policy right across the board, because as councillors we've all got concerns of the safety aspects, and we cannot base decisions unless we have the information which you were hoping to get. So I totally endorse everything that's been said, and I hope it will make it policy. Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Claire.
Thank you, Janet.
I'd
Faye?
like to raise a hand, if I may.
Yeah, Faye and then Stuart.
I totally agree with Janet and Gwyn and Veronica, and I'm glad that Claire has put this suggestion forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Faye. Stuart?
Yes, totally agree with Veronica. Started on this, but what's needed is the linkage between the two items: the HMO planning and the HMO licence condition. If you look on other authorities, Cardiff, Newport, places like that, they've got a lot more of them we have. They've obviously got TANs, stuff like advice notes on this. We obviously need to develop some practice on this, because my ward, and I suspect Pontypool, we've got it across the piece. It's not a case of north and south there, Gwyn. It's a case of what we've got in the borough, to be quite frank. When we got more practice, and we're pressured because it's a form of social housing, it's a form of housing for people, and it's what we're talking about, the rented sector, and getting housing for people that are desperately needed it. And we've got it all over Northwood. In fact, people are finding housing options for people, and we're desperate for it. So this is one aspect of it. And I think what you're looking at, toilets, cooking facilities and parking, that aspect of it, we need some guidance on it, and we need to have that every time we come to the planning committee. Otherwise, we're going to be spending time doing what we're doing now.
Yeah, thank you, Stuart. So what we want is a site visit, more information that Claire has said she can get for us, and more information about the licensing conditions. So would somebody like to move that? Janet's moved it.
I'll second it.
Seconding.
Yeah.
Right. So Geraint, could you go through in alphabetical order? For, against, or abstaining?
No problem, Chair. Start with Councillor Ashley, please.
I think you're getting me on for.
Yeah.
Councillor Constance.
For.
Councillor Crick.
For.
Councillor Evans.
For.
Councillor Haller.
For.
Councillor Gaynor-James.
For.
Councillor Keith James.
Yes, I'm for deferring for more information. Thank you.
Councillor Jenkins.
For.
Councillor Faye Jones.
For deferring for more information. Thank you.
Councillor Janet Jones.
For getting more information.
Councillor Parish.
For.
And Councillor Thomas.
For.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. So, as Geraint has said, that's unanimous. We are asking for a site visit, more information from Claire, and more about the licensing conditions. Okay. I think we're all clear on that now. So that's the last item on the agenda. So I'd like to say thank you to you all for your attendance and contributions today, and I'll close the meeting.